Hello viewers, and welcome to this evening's edition of Time with Your Banker and Financial Advisor. This program is sponsored by Dole Yogurt, Paradise Water, and Securities and Exchange Commission. We have a very distinguished guest this evening, and our topic will be on Securities and Exchange Commission. Just stay glued to your seat. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
What a new way to cool off and quench your thirst. And now everyone is enjoying the surprising experience of Paradise Pack treated drinking water.
Hi.
Join the refreshing experience and enjoy the all-new Paradise Pack treated drinking water. Paradise Pack treated drinking water. Drink pure, live more. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Welcome back, viewers. This program is sponsored by Securities and Exchange Commission, Dole Yogurt, and Paradise Water. With me today is Reverend Dio Tete. Actually, he's the Director General of Securities and Exchange Commission. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
And welcome to Time with Your Banker and Financial Advisor.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, getting you wasn't that easy. Very busy man, but
I know.
We
but
thank you.
Thank God I'm here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Today we want to look at Securities and Exchange Commission. People have heard about Securities and Exchange Commission, but most people don't even know what it is or what you actually do. So Securities and Exchange Commission, what exactly is it?
Okay. All right. So I think I know what you're talking about, because sometimes people wonder whether you are dealing with security issues.
Yeah.
but really, the Securities and Exchange Commission is a regulatory body that has been established to oversee the securities industry. Now,
Securities like?
Okay, so we can get into the definition of securities. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about securities, you can talk about a financial instrument that is negotiable, and that is typically issued by, let's say, a company or a government. And I'll give an example. So for instance, a company may decide to invite people to become part owners or part shareholders, and so they will sell some of their equity or their shares. So the equity or shares is an example
of ownership, their ownership.
Yeah, their ownership. Yeah. So when you buy shares in a company, that company has issued an equity security to you. Mm-hmm. So then when you buy it, you become a shareholder or a part owner of that company. Sometimes a company may not want to add on new shareholders, but they want to, let's say, raise debt in the sense that they are borrowing money to pay back at a specified time. We call it bonds. So they can issue a debt security. So when you buy the debt security, what it gives you is a right to earn interest as specified in the contract supporting a particular transaction. So these are two popular examples of securities, equities, and then debt. But there are other types like derivatives. But essentially, the understanding that we need to get is that when you talk about securities, it's a negotiable financial instrument. When we say it's negotiable, it means that it can be traded. And so when you buy shares, let's say in a company, and we have the Ghana Stock Exchange, which is a platform for the trading of securities. So when you buy shares in a company like Ghana Commercial Bank or Eco Bank or Unilever or any of the listed shares, you have to buy it through a broker. So the broker will go to the stock market or the stock exchange and then buy the shares for you. Now, after holding it for X number of months or years, you can decide that, I think I've had enough. I want to either harvest my investment, or I want to just get out of this particular type of investment for whatever reason. So then you again will contact a broker, and then the broker will go to the stock exchange and then will sell the shares on your behalf. So the security is tradable, and we say that securities are typically traded on exchanges or exchange platforms. So the Securities and Exchange Commission is the regulatory body that has been established to give that oversight over the entire securities industry, to ensure that you have an orderly and efficient and transparent market. Because when you talk about securities, which is a negotiable financial instrument, as I've said, it is not like selling tomatoes or any other,
products
product.
on
Yes,
the market. So you want to say that securities is not just the security company we
Oh,
we
no,
hear.
no. It's actually far.
It's far from that.
Far from it. Far from it.
We are looking at stocks and shares and bonds. These
Yes.
are
examples
of securities.
Yes.
And the Exchange Commission is there to regulate.
Exactly. To make it easier, let me put it this way. The same way we have the Bank of Ghana that regulates
the banks
and other non-bank
financial
institutions that are licensed by them. So also the Securities and Exchange Commission regulates the entire securities industry. And there are a number of actors or players that constitute the securities industry. And so the key thing I want to say is that securities business is regulated activity. When we say regulated activity, it means that it is subject to some kind of rules. So you can't just get up and operate.
Begin to do anything on that particular market.
Exactly. And because of the nature, because now when someone has maybe worked hard, been able to save his money, and has decided to invest, because we say to people that it's not enough to only save your money, but it's better to put your savings to work. In other words, invest them. So when someone has done that, that person wants to have some kind of assurance and some kind of protection that I'm buying a particular security that is regulated. In other words, the issuer, the one who, so the company or the entity that issues a security is the issuer. So the investor wants to be sure that the issuer is playing by the rules and is not going to be shortchanged at the end of the day. So securities business is regulated activity. I think it's something that people must understand. You can't just get up and...
Just like not getting up to come and start operating a financial services or a bank.
Exactly.
You need to be
and
licensed.
even if you look at other professions, you can't just set up a pharmacy or you can't just operate as a doctor, because the impact on the people who patronize your services can be serious, especially if you don't do it right. So Securities and Exchange Commission...
So there should be somebody who should be there to govern the interest of the participants.
Absolutely. And to make sure that those offering the services, those issuing securities, are also doing it in the right way. So we look at the both sides, the demand side and then the supply side, in the sense that those who are bringing securities to the market, they need to do it right, and those who are patronizing it, they need to do it right. Meanwhile, there are intermediaries who will bring the demand side and the supply side together. We call them market operators. And again, it's important for them to play by the rules. So the securities industry is regulated activity. And so the SEC, as we normally call it, Securities and Exchange Commission, is that regulatory body that has been mandated to give that oversight to the securities industry in Ghana.
So how long have you been in the country? When was it actually established?
It's interesting you ask because, like you said, people do not know much about SEC, but actually this year marks 20 years.
Oh, congratulations.
20 years since the establishment
20 solid
of
years.
the Securities and Exchange Commission. So we've been around for that long. And we believe that in the coming years, we'll make our presence to be felt more and more. But I think there's a lot that can be said for the impact of the SEC over the past 20 years. So the SEC was first, under the PNDC, Securities Industry Act, PNDC Law 333, was when the SEC, or the statute under which SEC was established. But it has recently been replaced by the Securities Industry Act 2016, Act 929. So we derive our mandate, our enabling act is currently the Securities Industry Act 2016, Act 929. Of course, there are other regulatory instruments that we have. That
so this is the law that backs your activities?
Yes, that's the law that set or established the SEC and defines the scope or the objectives or the functions of the SEC.
So what are some of your functions?
So if you look at Section 3 in our Act, it gives a long list of functions. Maybe I'll just
mention
a few. So, for instance, the SEC is required to give advice to the Finance Ministry relating things to do with the securities industry. Then the SEC also is empowered or is mandated to regulate, license, and various market operators. And we have a long list from exchanges. Now, when we talk about exchanges, we're talking about securities exchanges like the...
Who will have to look at the market operators.
No, so I'm just saying that the market, and if you look at like I said, Section 3 of the Act, you talk about securities exchanges. And an example is the Ghana Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Okay, now very soon we hope to have the Ghana Commodities Exchange. That's also a securities exchange. So it's one of the market operators. Then you can talk about commodities and futures exchanges, securities depositories, clearing and settlement institutions, credit rating agencies, fund managers, investment advisors, brokers, dealers, custodians, registrars. You can talk of unit trusts, mutual funds, private equity funds, hedge funds. So a whole list of what we call market operators. I remember when I was talking about the demand side and then the supply side. So the demand side refers to, if you like, the customers or those who have excess savings to be able to invest. But apart from having a platform like the Ghana Stock Exchange or any other platform, you need an intermediary who will put together that security for you to patronize. So that's essentially what we do.
Yeah. Viewers, we'll be right back after this short break. Our sponsors are the Securities and Exchange Commission, Paradise Water, and Dole Yogurt. Stay glued to your seat. Don't go anywhere.
What a new way to cool off and quench your thirst. And now everyone is enjoying the surprising experience of Paradise Pack treated drinking water.
Hi.
Join the refreshing experience and enjoy the all-new Paradise Pack treated drinking water. Paradise Pack treated drinking water. Drink pure, live more. This advertisement has been vetted and approved by the FDA.
Welcome back from the break. This program is sponsored by Securities and Exchange Commission, Dole Yogurt and Paradise Water. It's been exciting so far. We've discussed the role of the Securities and Exchange Commission, that's SEC. And we've known that they are mandated to regulate the exchange or the securities in the country. And their act that supports it, it used to be PNDC Law 333, but now they have their own act, 2016 at 929. So far, we are looking at market operators. You mentioned unit trusts, you mentioned the custodians, fund managers, you have also mentioned the investment advisors. Which other persons or companies operate as market operators?
Right. So we have nominees, we have underwriters, we have issuing houses, we have custodians, we can talk of primary dealers, we have hedge funds, mutual funds. So basically, the point I'm making is that for all these market operators, the role of SEC is to license them. So before we license, they want to make sure that they meet the licensing requirements. In other words, we want to tick all the boxes that they are fit and proper, or they are well capitalized or well positioned to give the kind of services that that particular license imposes on them. So that is a very important function of the SEC. We may later go into detail if we want in terms of what these operators do. But I think basically it's just one of the functions to regulate and license these market operators.
Yeah, I was thinking of maybe SEC getting at somebody to come and explain into details the functions of all these
of
each of them.
I think we can arrange that. But I just wanted to mention two other important functions of the commission. Okay. So one is to register and license and regulate these market operators. Another important function is to maintain surveillance over the activities of the securities to ensure that the market is orderly, is fair, and then there are equitable dealings. Another critical function of the commission, the SEC, is to monitor the solvency of the license holders and take measures to protect the interest of customers. That is a very important point, because you license someone when the person comes in, but on a continuing basis, you want to make sure that
you must supervise.
The person is solvent and can execute the mandate without any problem. Yes. So that's another function. And then also, when it comes to business combinations like mergers, takeovers, acquisitions, and all of that, we review and approve it. In other words, without coming to the SEC, especially in the public domain, it would be difficult for such business combinations to take place.
So you are talking about the market operators. Their companies, one way or the other, might want to merge. So
when you have a public two public companies that need are talking to each other and are considering combining,
together,
whether it's a takeover or a merger, they need to approach SEC to approve the merger or the transaction.
Let me understand this. That means that two companies that are on the stock exchange.
Not necessarily two companies on the stock exchange.
Two public companies that you have regulated.
Two public companies. Okay, so you can the companies code will distinguish between companies that are public and then companies that are private.
Yeah.
Okay. So the SEC's mandate covers the companies in the public domain.
Then you have a very wide scope.
Absolutely. And there are some public companies that are not listed. Okay, so
that are listed and not listed.
Yes, so there are some, if you take the Ghana Stock Exchange, it has, let's say, 40 listed companies or securities. So they are publicly listed. But I'm saying to you that there are public companies that are not listed yet.
Yes. So both the listed and unlisted, when they want to merge.
Public. The key word you must.
Public.
Yes, because if it's a private entity, then they don't need to
come to
come.
you.
Yes. You see,
so far as it is something related to the public,
because we are
then you
are to seek the interest of the public. So if it's a private company, that's private
their
matter.
own problem.
But if it's two public companies, or maybe a public company wanting to take over a private, once there's a public element, they will have to approach the SEC.
With this new, with Bank of Ghana wanting the banks to merge with this new capital requirement, if the two banks are public companies or public institutions, then aside Bank of Ghana, they must come to you also.
Yeah, so you'll find that for some of the banks that have decided to raise money from the public to meet the Bank of Ghana requirement, they've had to come to us.
Yeah.
So, and we would get Bank of Ghana to confirm that, you know, they are in good standing. Of course, we will do our own review and analysis. But basically, if you're a bank regulated by Bank of Ghana, if you want to come into the public domain to raise equity or even issue a bond, you still need to, because it's a security, you need to come to the SEC for approval. So that's another important function, approving all forms of business combinations of public
interest
entities. And then another important function that we at the SEC do, which follows from what I've just said, is we examine all invitations to the public.
Oh, I see.
So long as you are going to make an invitation to the public to raise either debt or equity, apart from the government, you must come for approval.
So
from
when you're talking of, I get you. So far as you want to take monies from the public.
Yes, if you are doing an invitation to the public. An invitation to the public is defined in the company's code. So if you are making an invitation to the public, you need
debt.
to, for debt or equity.
Equity.
Yes, you need to come to the SEC for us to approve that initial, that invitation to the public, you know. And the only exemption is the government. The government has a dispensation to issue, especially the debt securities. But
Treasury bills and other
any other, you'll have to come for
So you just don't
from
get up and decide that I have a scheme. I have a scheme like some coin, global coin, or maybe something that I want to sell and collect money from the public without, first of all, seeking approval from SEC.
So what I'll say is that once whatever you're offering can be described as a security, you have to approach SEC. That's how I would answer that. And if you're in doubt, you can always approach the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, to confirm whether what you are thinking of or what you have on offer is a security. But you know, if you look in our Act, Section 216, if you don't mind, I can give you the definition that we have of securities in our Act. So we say that 216 of the Act 929, we say securities include shares or debentures within the meaning of the Companies Act. That's A. B. Loan instruments of a company. C. Bonds or other loan instruments of the government or the government of any other country. D. Bonds or other loan instruments of a corporation established under an enactment. E. Rights or interest, whether described as units or otherwise under any unit trust. F. Warehouse receipts. Jane.
Warehouse receipts.
Yes, warehouse receipts. Jane, a right or option in respect of any shares, debentures, bonds, or notes. H, commodities, futures, contracts, options, or other derivatives. I, derivatives as defined under this Act. And J, any other instruments as the minister may by notice in the Gazette prescribe upon the recommendation of the Commission. So you find that it's a fairly wide definition. But back to your question, so long as whatever you are going to offer to the public represents a security, you definitely have to get the approval of the SEC. You can't just get up and say that you have a bright idea and then you make an invitation.
You want to implement it.
Yes. You need to
make an invitation and start collecting securities.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much for making time to come to this show. But we'll still have more to discuss.
Well, you're welcome anytime. I'm happy to spend time with your banker.
Yeah. Viewers, all too soon, our time is up. This is where we'll have to end today's episode on Time with Your Banker and Financial Advisor. This program is sponsored by Securities and Exchange Commission, Paradise Water, and Dole Yogurt. With me today have been the Director General of Securities and Exchange Commission, Reverend D.O. Tete. Stay glued to your seat next week and watch Time with Your Banker and Financial Advisor with me, your host, Betty Aye.